Well, iSTEP in itself is an internship program where students will go to a developing community in cooperation with a partner from TechBridge World, and they will look at, research a particular problem, and the program what it designs to achieve is being able to give students the experience of working in real situations, but real situations in the sense that it will actually empower the local community, respect the local community with which they are working. In other words, you go in and work on the challenges that they have identified, as opposed to walking in with what you think the solution to some problem is, and then of course you're working backwards of having a solution and looking for a problem. And of course in this, it gives students capability to work in a multidisciplinary team, working in globally distributed team. So there's lots of aspects to working in with iSTEP, the iSTEP program.
So my motivation for joining iSTEP 2012 was the fact that it was going to give me an opportunity to get to blend my knowledge in business administration and computer science as a minor. So then it was a good platform for me to get to apply both of my knowledge from both areas in one setting and at one place. So that was basically the major reason why I was motivated to join iSTEP 2012.
When I first saw the email about applying for it, my instinct was that I wanted to travel. But the more I read about it, the more I learned that it was a water and waste project, that it was something I'm really interested in. It's part of why I'm a civil engineer, and the fact that it would be using technology for such good purposes.
I tend not to think gender specifically necessarily when I design programs like iSTEP. I was thinking really about the students and the experience, and really what I wanted to do was shape the worldview of future leaders. And Carnegie Mellon is very fortunate that we get these incredible students who go on to do incredible things. But my worry, having been a student at Carnegie Mellon, was that our focus is really on sort of 1 billion people of the population and how they're going to improve their lives. And less of our work and our innovations really make an impact on the other 4 to 5 billion. And so that's really what I wanted to try and change. And it didn't mean that every student needs to go and work in developing communities, or that every student needed to, change their lives and go on and work in nonprofits or such. I think Bill Gates is a great example of someone who, went a path that was sort of a typical technology route, very successful, and is now doing incredible things. But it takes certain experiences for you to even start to think along those lines. And that's what I wanted to do with iSTEP.
I never really planned to study computer science, actually. But I first got enamored of computer science when as an undergraduate, I took an introductory computer science course, which was when I learned how to program for the first time. And I remember what really fascinated me at that time was the empowerment I got from telling the computer to do something and actually having it do it. So I found programming to be very interesting and lots of fun, and it really excited me that I was able to formulate these algorithms and these instructions to the computer and actually have the computer behave in a way dictated by me. So that was my first introduction to computer science, and that's when I feel that I caught the computer science bug, as it's described. And after that, it was basically a gradual process where I just got more and more interested, and ultimately ended up in the field of robotics, because that was even more empowering, because not only was I programming a computer to do something, but I was programming a computer on a physical device that then acted in the physical world. And I remember thinking that that's just so cool.
It's not ICT in and in itself that I am passionate about, but it's more what you can do with it. And almost everything today is based upon computing, communication, information in some form or another. So you have a chance to really work in a wide range of areas. You can pick and choose what it is that you want to do.
You can't ignore that I am a woman, and role models make a huge difference. And I think the fact that I am a woman and the fact that several of the key people at Tech Patrol are women, I think that makes a big difference. It encourages young girls and young women to think it's possible, and that's very powerful. I see that especially in the Doha campus, where women there, and especially the younger women, are sort of rethinking a lot of things that they have been told or traditionally handed down in terms of what their role should be in society. And this is led by Sheikh Hamoza, who is really, the First Lady of Qatar, essentially. And I have these students come and tell me, it's wonderful to see you as a professor, because there aren't a lot of women in computer science, and definitely not in robotics. So I think in that sense it does play a huge role. And it's not just our students. You go into these different communities and they see women doing these things, and they start talking about how they as women or girls should play a role.
Well, I think I've only had one person meet Selassie and myself and assume that he was teaching me stuff, and I was like, hey now, I came here with knowledge. I'm not just here to be taught.
Women go into fields in general because it's of something of interest to them, and it's something that they can combine with all the other aspects of their life. And ICT is perfect for that because it applies to all fields, and you can find the areas which interest you specifically.
People ask, how can we encourage more women to enter the field of IT or ICT or computer science? And I think giving women an opportunity to feel this excitement is really one of the best ways to do it. Give students an opportunity to engage in projects, to do things with real outcomes, and the process itself, which tends to be a very empowering process, will excite them about technology. I think it's also great and important to see role models, so seeing other women in technology or other people whom they admire, whether they are men or women, in technology who encourage them, I think is also very important, being inspired by others. And then lastly, encouragement, I think, is very important. I remember I had a professor when I was an undergraduate student who did not let me rest until I switched my major to computer science. I wasn't originally planning to be a computer science major. I took a computer science class. I really, really liked it. I was good at it. But I still thought, okay, I'm going to do some kind of engineering. And he kept talking to me. He kept telling me that, you're good at this, you like this, why don't you consider doing computer science? And he gradually won me over. So I like the fact that I wasn't just another face in the class. He took an interest in me and made it a point to encourage me. So I think that's also really important. So, having hands-on real experience in computer science, seeing role models and mentors, and then getting encouraged, I think are three key things that can be done to encourage more women all over the world to engage in computer science. And I think this is no different in the context of a developing country or a developing community. I think the formula, in a sense, is the same. Having young women, giving young women the opportunity to engage in these projects, letting them have role models and encouraging them. I think the formula is the same.
So far, there hasn't been too much of ICT related things for me to do, but then it's very interesting the research that is going on and the talk that is going on about the sensors and what we should do in terms of the locations and the points. It makes it very easier to visualize more because I have some kind of ICT knowledge or some knowledge in computers and all of that. So it makes it much more easier to visualize and easier to think through, and also in my role as a long-term strategist for the project, be able to visualize what should be done in the long term for the school and at the end of this project. So all of that is going well.
When I was in college, I actually did a robotics project in my senior year, and I went to local high schools and middle schools and talked about it. And I realized that it was equally important for boys to see women do this work and not question that and their ability to do that.
I don't actually know what keeps most females out of the field. I feel like it is an inspiring field to be a part of because of the potential for using technology for helping people out.
Since ICT is such a broad field, and it's a matter of women enter the field because they're actually choosing the area in which they want to work in. They see an application, they see something in which they can contribute, and something that would be satisfying to them. And I think that will be true for the future as well as for now. And as women become more familiar with the broad range of things that they can do and not be stuck in the traditional stereotypes for computing, that they will find it much more interesting, and you will see a lot more women entering the field.
The scare about computers being scary and being for men and being for males should stop, especially in this part of the world where it's more like the women are only inclined to do the lesser jobs like being secretaries and all that, and only the men are required to be the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, because the very few women that you find in ICT, they tend to be very, very good and very smart and very, very effective at what they do. So then the thought that only men are good at the difficult subjects should go. And also I think computer science or ICT should not be classified as difficult, so then it will stop warding a lot of females off, and then they will get interested in getting involved with computers and ICT, because my experience has been good, and I can promise any other female who would want to do that it would be a very interesting experience. And especially if you have very supportive people around you who would not bring you down, it is a very good experience.
Opportunities are also important, and a lot of times in a lot of different cultures, you'll know this as an anthropologist, the role of earning money or providing for the family falls to the male gender. And because of that, things like technology and training in such, when there are limited resources, it's taught to the sons. If there's only one computer in the house, it's in the son's room rather than in a common area where the daughter can use it as well. And so there are a few practices like this that should change. If you have only one computer, everyone should have access to it. Some things you can't change, so sometimes you do have very limited resources and you can only afford classes for one, and then it's really up to the family. But also in sort of more of a community setting, when we go into communities and we're trying to develop these solutions, we need to think about this solution, whatever we're developing, is it going to be accessible to the women of the community? If you put it in a place where the women are not allowed to go, or it's seen as unsafe for women, or unsavory for women, or what have you, then that's not a good solution. So we need to think through that aspect of it as well. And then always include the women when you're trying to design that solution, because they have great ideas. They are more than half the population, and any solution benefits from diversity of opinions. So if you're ignoring half the population, you're doing a really bad job at designing a solution.
Women go into various areas depending upon their interest and what the areas that attract them. Lots of women I have seen are actually interested in working in developing communities, looking at development, because it gives them the sense of being able to actually contribute to society and contribute to the world in general.
With respect to the impact of the iSTEP program on women technologists in developing communities. I think that the way that iSTEP is evolving this year, where the Carnegie Mellon iSTEP team is actually working very closely with a team from the partner institution, I think that has a great impact for empowerment, because the team from the host institution, the partner institution, has women on the team who are also having the opportunity to engage in these projects. And I think it's that process of engagement that empowers and encourages women in technology.
This becomes a education or an awareness issue of actually helping women to realize the capabilities of the field and noting that they can in fact actually apply ICT or computing to their areas of interest. In other words, they can make it as broad or as narrow as they particularly want to.
I would say that just as women empowerment has become a big deal these days, it would be good to go off the idea of women's rights a little and start to get women into computers and ICT, because the world is changing very fast and ICT is becoming like the talk of the day and the most important thing now. So it would be much more important if more attention is paid to women being empowered, not to just fight for their rights, but to also go into other industries and other subjects and topics like ICT, so that come some 20, 10, 50 years from now, when the world is all about ICT, when the world is all about computers and technology, women would also find their place there.
I think the iSTEP internship is really great. I think its strength lies in that real-world experience, as I mentioned, presenting a team of students with a real problem facing a real partner that needs to be solved. And this is just a great way to encourage creativity. It's no longer theoretical, it has a real meaning. And the fact that this is then done in a context the context of a developing community which might have fewer resources, just increases the challenge and perhaps also increases the sense of accomplishments when the project is successful. I think, I don't like to generalize, but for many people that I've spoken to, I think many women are motivated by, not just by the technology for its own sake, but also by the impact of particular projects and what the technology can do for society, for themselves, for their lives, for problems that they care about. And so in that regard, I think the iSTEP internship does have the potential to motivate women technologists in a way that they might not necessarily be motivated by other projects that just focus on the technology itself. And again, not to make a generalization, but this might be true.
So I grew up in Sri Lanka. I was second of 6 children, probably low middle income family, and I was one of those girls who really didn't get the opportunity to learn about computers until I went to college. But there are ways to do it. You don't have to take the traditional path, and I think that's really important. There are ways to do the things you love, to do things you're passionate about, and if it's technology, then by all means, it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy, or you're 14 years old, or you're 2 years old, or you're 65 years old. I think if you want to do something, I absolutely believe you should go out there and find ways to do it. And I also think that you shouldn't be afraid to try new things, and that's one of the beauties of what I do and why I love doing it, is because every day there's something new. There's a new challenge to overcome, and there are just huge problems in this world and huge challenges, and nobody's going to solve them on their own. They're just too big. So we need to learn to work together across all these different boundaries that have separated us, whether it's disciplines or genders or ethnic groups or what have you. When you cross these boundaries, when you put yourself out there, you discover amazing things about the world, about yourself, and about the things you can do together. And I think technology can help build these bridges, but ultimately it's the people who need to connect. And you should never lose sight of that. So I think women have to be an important part of this equation, given how many of us there are in the world. So in some ways it just makes no sense to not have them. It's just logically mandatory. So if you look at it that way, then, you know, no one should even be asking the question, should women be in ICT or any other field for that matter? We should all do the things and be able to do the things that we love. And we should know that we can do all of these things, because gender doesn't separate us from these different fields.